Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Yes, thank you for joining us on Ask Rob and Rob. This is the place where property questions come to be answered. We've got a couple of great ones in from Joanna and Tom this week, so we'll be hearing those in just a sec. But first, Mr. B, just in case anyone doesn't know by now, give us a quick reminder of how people can ask their own questions.
Very simple. Call this number, leave a message on the answer phone, and we'll answer it. That number is 013 808 00035. That's 013 808 00035. Or, if you're on your computer, feel free to go to thepropertyhub.net/ask, and you can leave a recording via your computer that way too. Both simple, both easy. That's exactly what Joanna's done.
Hi Robs, my name's Joanna and I have a few questions around building an extension on a property that we've just purchased. Firstly, could you recommend any books or websites which will explain to us what we should expect from builders on the job? For example, what's the various stages involved in the building of an extension or any building works on a house? Secondly, what are the key questions that I should ask the builders when they come round actually for the first chat? I mean, the salesmen always seem really nice, but I need to know what are the real questions to ask so that to ensure that I can go for the best man for the job. And finally, how can I ensure that the builders will come back to rectify any problems, like say 1 year later or so, if the sunlight begins to leak, etc.? Is this included in the T&Cs, or do we usually withhold money for a period of time? Please let me know. Oh, and also, is it better to hire a firm that contracts out all the jobs to the various tradesmen, or would I do better to just get each of the individual tradesmen myself? Thanks, Rob. And Rob, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joanna. Good question. And it is a tough one. So let's see if we can touch on a few different points in there. So first of all, you said recommended books or websites. Well, I've been laughed at for this one before, but I'm serious. I've recommended reading the Collins Complete DIY Manual. It sounds silly, and I'm not suggesting you decide to do everything yourself instead, but for 12 quid, you can get it, and it talks you through the basics of everything. And so it's just things like silly things, like when someone talks about like first fix electrics or something, like, well, what even is that? I didn't know what it was. And then I read the book. So it's a really useful thing, I think, to dip into, to get those bits of terminology, to just make sure you don't feel completely clueless, and you can ask a couple of questions with a bit of confidence when you are talking to builders. As for questions, well, without a great deal of knowledge, it is difficult. But I think the key is to make sure that you end up having complete specificity about what it is that's going to be done. So you might feel a bit silly, but just keep asking questions until you understand what's going on, and then make sure that you get it all in writing. And that goes for when you're actually agreeing on the job as well. So get absolutely clear on what it is that's going to be done, get clear on when it's going to be done. Make sure, if you can, you get a fixed price quote so you know exactly what it's going to be and there's going to be no nasty surprises. Get really clear on all the details, and then get it down in some kind of agreement. Now, depending on the size of the job, the agreement could just be an email where you kind of listed out what's what. That's just sort of down so as a reference point, or it could be a formal contract. The Federation of Master Builders has got a contract. If you go online and you'll search for it, it will come up. It's just a document that you can fill in with all the various details, or you can do your own. It's really up to you. But having that agreement for big jobs is really important because of a couple of different reasons. First of all, even with the best of intentions, there can be confusion over what's been agreed and what the specification is. And second of all, because if you do need to get them back to do something, then you can have that to point to. Realistically, once they are off site, it is difficult to get builders to come back and do any last little bits and pieces. All you can really do is your best on that front. But also throughout the project, make sure that you stage the payments and you're always paying in arrears for work that's already been done. That way, things can't really run away from you and you can make sure things stay on track the whole way through. It is difficult. You will feel out of your comfort zone. You don't have to take it on yourself. If it's a big enough job, you could always get a project manager in. But you should find, like with so many things, that if you get clarity at the start and you make sure that you're prepared, then everything's got the best possible chance of going fine.
So thank you for your question, Joanna. Next up, we've got Tom from York.
Hi, Rob and Rob. It's Tom from York here. Thank you very much for a great podcast. I've been listening to it for a few months now, and it's given me some great insight. Although I'm not a property investor at the moment, I hope to be very soon. And I'm just wondering a quick question on interest-only mortgages. So I'm just wondering what happens when you get to the point of you have paid the interest on your mortgage and you've got the outstanding balance to pay for the property. Is there a way of doing this, or do you actually not get to that point because you just keep refinancing and remortgaging throughout, certain periods of having the property, so every 2 or 3 years or so? If you could, it might be a bit of a stupid question, but it'll be great to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. When you're starting out, there's some things that are just a bit confusing because they are different to property that we live in general, and mortgages is one of those things. So interest-only mortgages, what are they? Well, on your own home, let's talk about your residential home for a start so you understand what the difference is. You will get a mortgage quite often that will be called a capital and repayment mortgage. And what happens is you pay the interest off that you owe on that property plus capital. And that happens every single month. And if you look at how that works over time, in the very beginning, you're paying mostly interest and a little bit of capital. And then slowly but surely, the amount of capital you're paying increases over time until towards the end, you're paying more capital than you are interest because the balance left is reducing. Hopefully that makes sense. But if you Google it to see a graph of it, then it'll make a lot more sense. Now, interest only is very, very different. Interest only, you only pay the interest and only ever will pay the interest. So if you have a mortgage of £50,000 today, in 20 years' time, if it's interest only, it will still be £50,000. So why would you do that? Well, there's actually lots of reasons why you do it. First of all, your cash flow. Your cash flows improve because your mortgage payments will be less, so you'll achieve a better cash flow. Also, the amount 50,000 is worth today will be a lot less in the future because that sounds daft, I know, because it's the same number, but it's inflation. If you think about it, if you had a car 20 years ago, for £20,000, it would probably buy a Porsche or a Jag. Fast forward 20 years, today, it buys a Mondeo. £20,000, the number's the same, but what it buys is less. And it's the same with debt. Debt is devalued over time. Now, this is quite a big subject, so luckily we've podcasted on this. If you go to the propertyhub.net/podcast, we've got a great search toolbar there. Go to it and type in interest only. And we've covered this in real depth before, but hopefully that snapshot answer will give you enough to go on. But you don't pay down the debt, but what you can do is extend it out and keep extending it out. So the number doesn't change, but you're not limited to just 25 years, which a lot of people think you are. You can then get a new mortgage in a few years' time for another 25 years. And actually, you can get them until quite late into life. But hopefully, by the time you come to sell it or whatever exit option you consider, the amount is practically credit card debt because the inflation has taken hold of it so much. So I appreciate that's quite an intense answer. There's a lot there. So your next step from here, Tom, is go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast. Use our little cool search bar, which is really good. This is good for everyone, by the way, if you've got a subject you want to learn about. Type in interest only and you'll find the podcast that we've covered on this in some depth there.
Great answer there. Hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer for you. Just to emphasize what Rob said, do get over there, use that search bar. There's so much great stuff buried in the archives. And if you don't subscribe to the podcast, go on, subscribe. You'll make sure you'll never miss another episode again. Everything will come straight to your phone. And while you're there on the Property Hub website, check out the forum as well. There's so much valuable stuff on there. If you use the forum search, there's loads of great information. If you use the podcast search, there's loads of great information. The hard part isn't finding it, it's getting through it all. So we will leave you to go and do that. Have a rummage through the archives and make sure you're done in time for Thursday when there's going to be another episode of the Property Podcast. And then we'll be following up on Tuesday with Ask Rob and Rob. So until then, enjoy your property learning and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.